Imagine turning passion into powerful leadership on and off the field. At FSU, you can earn a 100% online master's or graduate certificate in athletic coaching. Designed by coaches, for coaches, no matter your experience or sport. FSU Center for Athletic Coaching, educating today's coaches to lead tomorrow's athletes.
Well, welcome everybody to another edition of Coach Talk. Thanks for joining us. And my guest today is Ben Waldrop. Ben, thank you for joining me. If you wouldn't mind, just give everybody a little bit of a background of who you are, how you got here, what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dr. Baghurst. I'm from Pensacola, Florida, and I was a football guy. I went to Florida State for a couple of years, got to play under Coach Bobby Bowden there. Ended up at Troy University and played for Larry Blakeney. He's another well-known Hall of Fame coach. Actually got inducted last year in the Hall of Fame. And so tremendous blessing there with collegiate athletic experience. And I always wanted to be a coach. Well, I really wanted to just play professional sports, but like everybody else, right? I knew that wouldn't last. And from there, I just wanted to go into coaching somehow. At that time, I didn't have interest in interscholastic athletics per se. And I did get the opportunity to continue my coaching quest after my athletic career, served as a GA, administrative assistant GA, kind of worked my way up at Troy University, stayed on staff there. I ended up coaching with full-time assistant, coached linebackers for 1 year. And that was a pretty short collegiate stint I had. I was pretty young at the time. I got the taste of the good and the bad of collegiate coaching, and I landed on my feet in 20 years ago, almost exactly, in Brevard County. After we didn't have you lose more than you're supposed to, and the two or three new guys on the staff have to go, kind of thing. I landed in Brevard County coaching, got back into coaching high school football, and I've been doing that for the last 20 years. Now, I did not realize at the time how much I would enjoy coaching high school sports, and I think that there's a lot of more intrinsic value that you can get when you get to really pour into the development of someone and help them grow up and really developing. And coaching and at the college and even professional level, it's just different. I know that you're still dealing with X's and O's, and there's a lot of exhilaration and purpose in that as well, but there's not that mentorship piece, which I really loved, and developing those relationships. I also work as an educator in Brevard County, taught at 6 different schools and different roles: math, health, physical education. Serving currently, I've served as a middle school athletic director. Serving currently as peer counselor is my title, helping with administration, with discipline and coordinating a school suspension. I just recently accepted a new assignment, which I'll be starting next year over at Cocoa High School, being CTE Academy's director, which I'm really excited about. So not your typical coach per se, because I've been getting involved in a lot of different things. And also along the way, I've had the opportunity to coach in youth sports as well. So that's, something that I think is, maybe not something that people would bring up all the time, but I think it's very not just purposeful, but meaningful, pouring into your community, and I have had the opportunity to do lots of youth coaching in our area. And one of the things that I did was about 10 years ago, started the first 7-on-7 organization for 10U and 12U and 14U. Prior to that, all that was right before you saw the explosion of the sport, and coaching youth baseball, coaching youth football, so that's kind of me in a nutshell with my coaching background and education.
You talked about being in the school system for 20 years and going through half a dozen different jobs or more. And you said, I think 6 schools. The one consistent in that is coaching. If I was looking at that from an outside in without any kind of maybe presuppositions, I would say, well, it sounds to me like coaching is your career. But when we look at stipends and salaries of coaches in school systems, that's not career level salaries. So how do you balance that where you're trying to be a professional in a full-time job, but I would argue if you could coach full-time, you would.
Oh, 100%. As a matter of fact, when I coached my first season coaching in high school, I wasn't in the school system, and I was a sports and fitness management major. I actually had a bachelor's and master's in that, and but that didn't qualify me to teach, so I had to go through an alternate certification program when I decided to come on campus to get certified. And the number one motivator for me two things. Getting on campus provided a way for me to be around. I have access to the students year round, which is needed because you basically have to do life with your athletes. And every good program has their hands on their athletes and year round, developing them, whether on and off the field, monitoring their academic progress, all those kind of things that go with it. So being off campus didn't allow for that. And so the only way to have access to students was to get into the school system. And then not to mention that was kind of standard at the time and for coaches to be on campus as a teacher. It is now you're creating a segue to discuss coaches compensation, which I'm happy to jump into. I have had the opportunity over the last 2.5 years to serve on staff with Florida Coaches Coalition as a Central East Regional Director. And one of the things that I'm sure a lot of your followers are aware of is that we have been able to be a part of some instrumental work that's been happening on the state level to address coaches' compensation because it's much needed. So, to that note, let me just back up for a second and explain to you why I felt, I guess, not just motivated, but obligated to put myself out there and to start advocating for coaches' compensation. I mean, over that time span, and you said, yes, it was 20 years now. I have been more than frustrated. It's been demoralizing, and it's been sad to see so many of my friends leave the profession. I have had so many friends that have left, either not more. What a lot of people don't realize, they read in the papers occasionally that what's reported about the high performing coach may go to another state, but for every high performing coach that goes to another state, there's at least 20 or 30 more that just stepped away from it altogether and are getting a job in, selling insurance or, financial advising or whatever it is that they go into, find another job and walk away from coaching. And we're talking quality people that are great mentors for our youth, people that I would want my own sons and daughters to be mentored by. And the primary reason, which all of them did that over the years that I saw, was for financial reasons. And, at the end of the day, as much as, coaches and teachers, get into it for the right reasons, you have to win at home first. You have to win at home first. And if you can't provide the lifestyle for your family that you feel like you are, should be doing, then you're going to look for other ways to do that. And now I'm not, I didn't do that. And I'm not, but I've never judged anyone else for doing that. And the coaches' compensation in Florida is so bad that that now that it's when it finally came to light at the state level, and the state representatives and the state senators finally started hearing what was really going on, that their jaws were hitting the floor. I mean, that is, it's indefensible. It's not only what has been happening in Florida for coaches and in terms of financial support and compensation is not only unethical, but I would argue illegal. And so it's just indefensible. And I think for that reason, that is partly why once Florida Coaches Coalition finally got in front of the right people, that we started to see change happen so quickly, is because it has to. And I do want to make this point, okay, that when coaches talk about compensation, it sounds almost, it can come off as individual focused, self-focused, but coaches, I've never met a coach. Okay. Well, I say never met a coach. I say the vast majority of coaches that get into the business, they do it to give back to the community, to give back to the sport, to pour into lives of others. Most coaches, the vast majority of coaches, they don't get into it to get rich, but they have to be able to make a living. And when coaches are getting out over time, the more coaches that have gotten out, the inevitable is that you see a lesser quality individual, lesser quality of professionalism, a lesser quality of mentoring, lesser quality of compliance understanding, of there's a degradation of the quality of coaching and mentorship that is being provided to our student athletes. And so who's the real loser? Well, we all are, because, coach, high school interscholastic athletics is the number one extracurricular program that supports students. Okay. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I know that I'm sure you'll like to hear me say a lot of things that you probably say on a regular basis. But the data is there. There's plenty of research that will show that athletics are the number one dropout prevention program, that they're the number one extracurricular program that supports the academic mission of the school. It shows better attendance rates, shows increase in GPA, can show better behavior in schools and students, is a number one indicator for success in a student after high school, is the number one program for building life skills in our students. And so when these things are not being done to the highest level, then what happens is our future generations are suffering, and it's are those future generations that are the contributing members of our society. And so it's really a society that suffers when we don't give the coaching profession the support that it needs to be to be performing at a high level, to be making sure that there's competition in the workplace, to make sure that we're having high standards, that we're supporting those individuals. Because the big why behind it all is that when we don't support coaches, we're not supporting the students. When we're not supporting the students, we're not thinking ahead and what is going to be happening to our society, because this is the future generation that's at stake.
I agree with you. Now I'm going to push back and take an alternative view and say, well, if I'm a superintendent, or if I'm an athletic director, or if I'm a principal, why should I pay coaches more when I can still get coaches to accept what I'm offering them? Because Coach Waldrop over there is still here. And while I may lose some of these coaches here, well, there's some warm bodies over there that'll take the stipend and do it. So why do we need to pay you more? I mean, I get, sure, yeah, well, you'll be better at what you do. Maybe we'll have some more wins, or maybe the kids will be better taken care of. But ultimately, in the fiscal environment that I'm in, where budget cuts come seemingly every year, I still got coaches and they're still accepting the pay. So I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're basically describing the current situation. And I know I was very critical of the coaching profession in Florida. And I think I just have to be honest about it. What we see a tremendous turnover, which you report pretty regularly. I think you've got a lot of data that shows how much the turnover, and you show that. So if any of your viewers want to go back and look at some of the stuff that you post, you can more accurately describe the turnover rate that we're seeing. But I would say probably, I'm just going to throw a number out there, 2/3 of the coaching positions are filled with either a parent who comes in for a short time and comes and goes, or a young person who thinks, oh, that sounds like fun, I used to play sports, and comes and goes. And so there's not any stability within the programs. And so the principals, superintendents, and all the powers that be that are responsible for staffing these programs, they have been able to get by. It's like basically what you're saying. Why should they change if they don't have to? Because they can get by. And you're basically describing why it hasn't changed over the last 50 years. And we'll have to go back to the Employees Act that passed in 1974 and 1975, when we saw in the state for the first time that collective bargaining was utilized by teachers, and that the state did that because to protect themselves from a teacher strike, again, which had occurred in some years prior to that. And at the same time that the law authorized for teachers, public employees to be represented, okay, and that provided a way for them to have a voice to negotiate wage for them, salary, and whatever employee rights were needed or wanted. At the same time, the state was able to protect themselves from being enduring another strike, because at the same time the law it banned public employees from having the ability to strike as well. So now over the last 50 years it's been since that happened, you have seen coaches supplements is what they're called in the state of Florida. They're a supplement to your salary. You have seen them be stagnant. In some counties, they haven't changed at all. In some, they've gone up a little bit. Okay. And so that has been why have the stipends not moved over that time? Well, we believe that there's numbers of reasons for that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, who is responsible for negotiating for teachers? In each county, in each district, there is a union that has had control over the negotiating through collective bargaining for the compensation for the teachers and the staff, school district employees. And ultimately, it's their responsibility to speak for coaches, and they have not been doing that. And that's the bottom line, is that the teacher unions, I'm not anti-union, FCCs, we never set out as to, be antagonists to teacher unions. Most coaches are teachers. We support teachers. We support coaches.
Really? Most coaches are teachers?
Well, I don't know the current data, but that used to be the case. Okay, so yeah, I'm glad you pushed back on that. That used to be the case when I got into it. I don't know the current.
Yes, I would argue it's the opposite. That most coaches aren't teachers, and so the teacher unions. Why would a teacher union? I mean, put yourself in the place of somebody who is a teacher, not a coach. Why would I advocate for more stipends to a coach when they're not even in the school?
Yeah, but when did it transition to community coaching? That's happened in the last 15 years. Okay, so what about the previous 35 years? Is what I'm saying. Is that the teacher unions weren't doing anything, and that's why you saw individuals who were quality and compassionate, or not compassionate, were passionate about sports and pouring into youth, and they got out. There was some teachers or some coaches. There's a lot of schools that have teachers in the building that used to coach, and they just realized it wasn't. They didn't want. They could make more money becoming an official, or they could make more money doing driving an Uber. Or I knew a coach that was delivering pizzas instead. He got out and was doing Shipped and all those kind of things. So when sometimes the reality of it is that it didn't make financial sense for a lot of people to stay in it, because the pay didn't reflect the time that was required. And that's the reality of it. It requires a lot of time, and the pay doesn't reflect the time that is required. And that's what really has to happen, is the pay has to reflect the time that is required. And I think with FCC bringing that to light, I think that is what really is one of the things that has moved the needle, is that but I want to come back to your question earlier about why would they change? Well, they wouldn't. That's the thing. That's the reality of it. And it's sad. They really wouldn't change if they didn't have to. That's because that's just the way it is. But thankfully that we have had lawmakers that have heard our cry. There have been, we have advocates in Tallahassee now that are state representatives and state senators that have heard our plea. They've heard the stories, and many of them, if you go back and listen to the different subcommittee meetings and during session, when this bill that has recently gone through both chambers was being debated, you can even hear them tell their own stories about how they directly were impacted by coaches. And they even credit, many of them sitting in Tallahassee right now would even credit their success, and the reason why they were where they are today is because a specific coach in their lives. And I think that there's a lot of people out in society that can relate to that as well, which is why coaches are so revered out in communities. And which is why so many people even still today want to get into the profession, because they want to be able to do that for someone else. Because, ultimately, life, everyone doesn't live life to try to get become famous or rich. Everyone doesn't do that. Okay. Some people do, but really more than that, a lot of people really just want to live a life of significance. They want to live a life of purpose. They want to live a life of meaning. Coaching provides a way to do that, because you can really change someone's life. You can impact the trajectory of someone that can be an exponential impact in your society, because that person impacts another person, and that ultimately is what has been my driving force, through the tough times or through the financially hard times or whatever it is just, hanging on to living that purposeful life, because that is really ultimately why I'm doing it. And so now that we don't have to worry about in my opinion, the principals or the superintendents or and their opinions anymore, because it's gotten past them at this point, and you can't let the cat's out of the bag, and so now we're just going to continue. We want to work alongside the district personnel and the administrations at the schools, and we want to collaborate, and we want to work together. We want to be work together and be allies through this. But ultimately, Florida Coaches Coalition is here to be that voice that coaches have not had in Florida for however many years. And we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop saying and talking about what's going on, the realities of it. And we don't have to make anything up. All we have to do is just be honest. And what's really going on is so bad that it's indefensible. And we're not going to stop until we have a goal to just continue to enhance the profession as long as we have to.
Just for clarity, for people who aren't familiar, in Florida, there was a bill passed called HB 731 that allows the school districts to use booster club donations to increase pay for high school coaches and extracurricular sponsors. It allows the superintendent to designate a coach as an administrator, which then allows them to negotiate independent compensation. And they're allowed to be paid up to the highest amount of the administrator in that district. So there's potential there for coaches to really change their current stipend. But it's also very much tied to two things. One, do you have a booster system that is going to pay you more? And two, is the superintendent going to allow you to be an administrator to get that booster money? And so, Ben, while it is encouraging, I'm also seeing the glass is not half full, in the sense that there's some holes in this. I think a lot of maybe Olympic level sports, women's sports, for example, don't have the booster support that maybe football and basketball have. And so what we may see is that some coaches in the school district are being paid very well, and the other ones continue to be paid very poorly. I also worry that districts that are in higher SES environments will be able to attract coaches by offering them more and pulling coaches away from maybe lower SES where they just can't compete. So I think there's more to be discussed on this. I think there's definitely more work to be done. It's a great start. It's exciting that we're seeing some traction in the government to do something about this, but I still feel like this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay. Yes. I have a lot to say about everything that you just said. Okay. So, all right, good. All right. So, let's recap where we started. We began advocating for what we were calling minimum wage, and we believe that legally that they should not be at the schools, and that should not be requiring that coaches work for less than minimum wage, which is what has been happening. And we had a lot of data to support that, and there was a lot of traction for this minimum wage increase that was going to increase supplements around the state around 300%, and that part of the bill did not go through this time. Okay. And when I said earlier, I mean, we're not going to stop fighting for what is right. Okay.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
The other component to that was proposed was the opportunity for coaches to do professional development as part of that process, where they had opportunities to do training that would increase their stipend. And unfortunately, that also disappeared as well.
Right. What I would like to say about that is, not to just deflect it, is that we at FCC believe that both of those issues are very important, and we're going to be continuing to have those conversations. And I think that you will be hearing more about that in the future. Okay. And I know you will be, and I can't go too much into it, but I want to make sure that everyone knows that we didn't give up on that, and that those things we're going to continue to work on. Okay. Improving the professional development, the certification process is much needed. And the part about minimum wage, the minimum wage proposal, what that would have done there was a lot of hope for that, because it would have affected everyone right away. Ultimately though, let's be clear though, ultimately, all that it would have done is raise the floor. The floor is so low right now. With that proposal, raising 300% would have still been probably 300% under what it is in Georgia, okay, or even more so than what it is in Texas. So although it would have been, it's still much needed. That ultimately it would have raised this floor, and that is needed. But is that what's really going to be best for long term? Okay, is to raise the floor, or is what really best for long term is to raise the ceiling? All right, and let's talk about that, because the two provisions in the bill that just went through, and it hasn't been signed by the government, will be signed next month, but passed through both chambers, is there's two different avenues that you could argue, three, in which that a school district can allow for their coaches compensation to go up, all right, in a way that the ceiling goes up, and the ceiling can continue to go up year after year after year after year. And so now, yes, whereas it won't affect every coach right away, it will affect some coaches right away, but it can affect it can affect them in such a way that can be what we believe and we're hopeful for will snowball. Okay. And it will snowball into other surrounding schools and school districts, and a rising tide will raise all ships is the hope anyway. With that part that's happening. So let's talk about that. You have one provision which will allow booster clubs or organizations to support their coaches or extracurricular sponsors. So it's not just sports coaches, athletic coaches. It can be your debate teacher, it can be your band director, it can be anyone who's putting in time, investing into the students after school. Can receive. Well, it authorizes districts to allow booster clubs to contribute to their coaches' pay. Okay. Let's the second one, and I want to come back to that and talk about that in more detail. The second provision that's in the bill, it authorizes school districts to negotiate to pay their coaches more. I know that's not the language, but that's essentially what it's saying, Dr. Baghurst, is I talked about the collective bargaining earlier, and that's where a lot of people don't understand is that there are some districts that have not been able to increase the stipends for their coaches because it had to go through collective bargaining, and that's not what's being advocating for in those meetings. Okay. And so the part about allowing coaches to negotiate their wage, that is not putting the expectation on coaches to go in and have some kind of negotiation with their district. All that it's doing is it's authorizing the school districts to bypass the collective bargaining to change those, to increase those supplements, all right, without having to go through the unions, which is very important, because as of right now, all right, we cannot say that the teacher unions have advocated for coaches in a meaningful way, because or else it would be different than it is. And so now 10 years from now, or 5 years from now, if you have a school district that hasn't changed their supplements, well, now you can't blame the union. Then you can't blame the unions for it. Okay. It's because the districts have the opportunity now to step out on their own right away. And we know districts are ready to do this. There are districts that have already mentioned, that have already expressed that they're going to do this right away, that they're going to increase the supplements. The part about the administrator, where it says it allows coaches to be classified as administrators. The whole point of that, and athletic directors rather, which should have already been done. Why are athletic directors not considered administrators in Florida? That should have been done a long time ago. And they're working every single night. They're working, 80, 90-hour weeks, some of them. And they need to be classified as administrators. So what is now you have, so on one hand, you have the bill authorizes districts to pay coaches more. Okay. On the other hand, it authorizes districts to allow the communities to contribute to the pay of the coaches. Okay. So you have two separate avenues that districts can utilize. Okay. But they have to authorize it. And that is one critical piece of understanding that we have to know, that has to be mentioned here, is that it authorizes, it doesn't mandates. And that's really where FCC, where we have our work cut out for us this summer and move in the months ahead, is trying to ensure that districts are going to take advantage of this, so that the coaches in there and the districts and these areas can see the benefits. But you mentioned earlier about how this benefits school districts or schools that have strong booster clubs. Well, if you're only thinking about one part of the bill, the districts, a lot of the districts that actually have maybe lower socioeconomic or less boosters, their districts are operating with budgets, some of them with a billion. Okay. And there's a lot of money in that district, and they will oftentimes get allocated extra funds, and they can use, there's a lot of resources available that they have to them. And we would like to think that they would invest some of that money into what we know is the number one extracurricular program. Okay, to the academic athletics is the number one extracurricular program to support the academic mission of the school. All those things that we mentioned before. And how can you support how can you have those good programs? How can you have a good program if you have no stability within those programs, if you have turnover in those programs? So these districts will have the opportunity to step up and invest more of their appropriations into the coaches without blaming the unions now. Okay. Now back to I do want to talk about the booster club thing, because I do think that if on the surface it seems like only certain sports will benefit, well, I would argue that it is actually some of those Olympic sports that actually have more potential finance backing behind it than is given credit for, because right now what we've seen not only some coaches have got out of interscholastic athletics and gone into the private sector through AAU sports. So oftentimes you have whether it's baseball or volleyball or swimming, even or some of these individual sports like golf. They may have a coach on campus, but their parents are really paying them to be coached year round by someone else off campus. Are you following me? The parents are already in Florida. The parents are already used to paying coaches. They're paying them through AAU. They're paying them through club. In Central Florida, it is, if you want to play baseball, if you want to play volleyball, if you want to play soccer, they pay year round to be on these clubs. And it is, when you join the club, they're very open about this much goes to your coaching fees. So what this bill is going to do is going to bolster interscholastic athletics. It's going to encourage these coaches to come back on campus. They don't have to be off campus to operate their business. They can come on campus, have access to the athletic facilities. It actually is going to make more business sense, because now you don't have to pay for facility. You have access to a facility year round. And you can still, and so what it does is going to combine this off season to this in season and strengthen it. And it's not going to be, it's already happening. And, whether in golf, it's happening in swimming, it's happening in tennis, it's happening in sports that a lot of people don't realize.
I want to be thoughtful of your time and recognize that this I think is probably a longer discussion than maybe one podcast, because we really only talked about stipends and salaries so far in Florida, and here we are 40 minutes in. I usually end the conversation with just advice for coaches. You've been in the field a long time. You've been working in high school sports for decades. What kind of advice would you give somebody else who's maybe interested in coaching, or maybe interested in working in high schools?
Well, I would encourage anyone who is interested in getting into coaching to go for it, because like I said earlier, that when you invest into young people, to me, there's no other intrinsic value that you can get outside of raising your own family. You are investing in the impact that you can have in society is exponential, and you're not just going to impact. You don't even see the impact that you have right away a lot of times, but thankfully I've been in it long enough that I get to see people all the time that was either a teacher or a coach for 10, 12, 15, 5 years ago. And they'll come out and say something that how you made an impact in their life, and they're appreciative of it. And that is living a life of significance. That is living a life of purpose, is being, obviously people, I'm a spiritual person. I believe God calls people into different professions, and nothing against other professions. Someone goes into science and can discover an immunization that can save lives and impact society in a meaningful way through other professions. But coaching is definitely investing into our future generations is a tremendous privilege, and it's something that is much needed, and we need a a greater, we need to see that that profession thriving again. And if I could add one more thing to that is, if I could say something to coaches that are in it, that I'm speaking to someone thinking about getting into coaching, but to speak to coaches that are in it, the one piece of advice I would give them is sometimes less is more. And I don't know if that's something that you. I want to thank you while I have the airtime here. I know that I've done it on Twitter and so forth, but I love your books on that are your reflection books that give little daily devotions and little nuggets of information that you've taken from your interviews and books that you've read and things like that. And I don't know that if you've actually said this in one of yours, and if you are, then I know I'm preaching to the choir. But that's one common mistake that I see from a lot of coaches is just not being able to prioritize things and what's really important. And sometimes less is more. And, a lot of coaches get caught up in trying to just repeat and do things the way that they remember things being done when they were a player or when they were in college, or, what they see someone else is doing. And sometimes a lot of times I see a lot of coaches trying to do too much and forget about what's really important. And our student athletes, they're not all into it for the same reasons that we were. And they want to be with their friends. They want to have a good experience. They think they want to have fun. And, there's a lot of other reasons why they're there. And I understand that a lot of coaches are, they're taking their job serious. And I understand that, but I see players get burnt out. I see student athletes give up and walk away. And you push them away when you forget about what's really important. And you sometimes you just have to know your why, and you're there to make sure that I believe that the kids are having a great experience, that you're making an impact in their lives, and that all students, they want to feel like they belong. And you can offer that to them through your athletics. You can give them a place where they feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. They want to feel like they're important. They want to feel valued, and you can offer that to them, because you can make everyone, they don't have to be the star player to have an important role, but you have control over whether or not they feel like they have value or whether or not they have significance. Everyone wants to feel like they have significance in this world. And you can also control whether or not, to some degree, whether or not they have fun. And if kids are not going to stay in it. There are kids in the interscholastic level. They are still kids. They're not professionals. And so, I think that if sometimes when you're trying to do too much, you squeeze those things out because for the good reasons sometimes, but sometimes less is more. And if you do that, then you can, you'll reap more rewards. You'll reap more stability. You'll reap better alignment with your team. You'll have better culture and morale, which ultimately is going to determine a lot of your success and failure. And I don't think a lot of coaches realize that. They just get caught up in the day-to-day, the tasks, and the lesson plan, the practice plan, and the drills, and everything like that. And if you lose those things, then the kids aren't going to want to be there.
Thank you, Ben, for joining me. And by the way, if anybody wants to reach out to Ben, wants to discuss more about the Florida situation or just coaching in general, you can reach out at ben.waldrop, WALDROP, at floridacoaches.com. just a reminder, everybody, we try to do these once every few weeks. So be sure to like, subscribe, follow wherever you're watching. But on behalf of myself, Tim Baghurst, and Ben Waldrop, thanks so much for watching.
Thanks for having me.